Welcome to Cybertron. This is my video review for my custom 2005 Cybertron Defense Hotshot and Mudflap. Here's how they scale with some other Unicron Trilogy toys, some modern ones. I think they all look pretty good together. And we'll start with Mudflap. There's not a lot going on here. Really all I did was I just lengthened his legs and I gave him these two rifles which came from Shinkalion. So I think, oh yeah, and I gave him ankle tilts as well, so there's some ball joints in his ankles. So it does make him a lot taller and lengthens his legs out because he did look pretty stumpy before. But yeah, I think these rifles are pretty cool, especially because he only has like close range weapons. Well, I guess he's got the missile launcher under his arm, but I think these two rifles look pretty great in his arm, even though they are like really hollow on the inside. So nothing too special there. I did have to trim out the handles a little bit so they would fit well in his hands, like deep enough. And then the ball joint ankles are pretty self-explanatory. You can see I just put a Lego ball joint in there, and then I put the other end of the ball joint there. And now he has good tilting ankles, which is very nice. Feels a little bit more stable. I do like ankle tilts. I don't think they're incredibly necessary, but they do help a lot. Alright, now I was going to unscrew his leg to show the inside, but it's more hassle than it's worth. So really you just carve out this channel, and then there's a little bit of a channel on this side. You do the same thing. And you can see this is like the original friction tab that holds his leg into place. So usually that little friction tab is inside his leg down here. So you do need to press that to collapse his leg again. It does lock his leg in place, which is kind of a good feature. And then I think originally, I should be able to feel the click somewhere. I think originally his leg was about, I want to say this tall was how big his legs are. I'll have to look it up. Okay, here it is. This is how tall he was originally, so you could see his black knees coming right there. So he wasn't too bad looking at this scale. I think he was just a little bit short, and I kind of go back and forth, like this looks cool too. So he's still a little bit taller than our Starscream here. But compared to now his legs click out this much, which is probably too much. But I think he just looks better with the longer legs. I think it just suits him a little bit better. I don't know why. I feel like it's just more correct, especially it makes him less like gorilla. But I can see like these legs being probably too long for some people. Alright, and let's go to the much more complicated Cybertron Defense Hotshot. And I guess he's not really that much more complicated. The things I did for him is I added biceps here, so now he has bicep swivel. And I did lengthen his legs a little bit. It kind of doesn't really make sense for this figure because he is actually supposed to be pretty stocky. But his head is so big, I think he looks kind of dumb with how tiny his legs are. So starting with his legs, I did basically the same thing. I just made it so his legs could extend a little bit further, so I had to hollow out some space. This is how tall they were originally, so it's hardly different. It's only a little tiny bit different. And I think this looks fairly good too. I just think his head is kind of too big, and at least when he's a little bit taller, it makes his head look a little bit more in proportion, because he does have just this big head, which is kind of annoying. So that was one of the mods I did to this figure. And then the more important one is you can see these ball joints here. So I completely replaced his elbows with these ball joints. So now he's like fully articulated. He's technically got a forearm swivel for his fist, and he's got bicep swivel. So he's got both sets of joints. This was actually a really annoying mod that was way harder than it had any business being, but I think it worked out in the end. So he's got that articulation. I think that's a big improvement. And if we compare that to the Generation Selects Hotshot. I do enjoy the head on this figure. I think it is an improvement from his original head, but I think his original head is good enough. It's a little bit better than, well, it's good enough. So you can see there's just not much of a comparison. Even with these add-on kits, he just doesn't look right. I do like the colors of the new one. They do match the colors really well. But I think the original just has its own thing going on, and I do prefer like the old toys because I do feel like they feel sturdier. Like you talk about hollow gaps, and like really people say it happened all the time, but really you don't really see it. Like I guess there's some waffling here, but really there's no other hollow bits on this guy. He's just a really deluxe toy. He just feels really good. And then I did hollow out his instep a little bit just so he can leg spread and still be pretty stable, because there used to be like a little bulge here, so he couldn't do that. So pretty simple little mods on this guy, and I didn't have the original cannons for this guy, so I did use the upgrade set cannons and I just glued those on. So these are permanently attached. So I think that looks pretty good. And then we can of course open up all his missiles. I did give them a little bit of a paint up, especially the ones on front because they weren't originally painted. And then I did tighten up the missiles on his shins because these pods were really loose. And I think with his new elbow and bicep swivels, I think that just looks so cool, having all his missiles deployed, ready to go. Well, most of his missiles. We have to get a cyber key in here and just jam that back here. And that'll open up the rest of his missile pods. Yeah, I think that looks pretty epic compared to this guy, which I think also looks very cool. But I think the old one's just better. It doesn't have thigh rotation though, which is really annoying. So that's maybe something I'm gonna have to figure out how to fix up. But otherwise he has most of the same articulation. He also doesn't have waist swivel. There is enough space I could work in a waist swivel, but it's not that important, let's be honest. Yeah, and I think this figure does the job. He fills in that gap in my display stand, so I think that's looking pretty good. And then as for how I did this mod, it was enormously painful. It took a lot of trial and error because his elbows are just weirdly designed. So I ended up putting his biceps up here originally, and then he looked really stupid, so I realized the biceps had to be behind this joint. So I had to basically redo the whole thing and then move the whole joint back there. But I'll go ahead and transform him. He transforms pretty much the same. Alright, and here he is in vehicle mode, and there is some mess up right here, but that's to make space for his new longer biceps, so that's kind of by design. But otherwise, the back of his vehicle is pretty much perfect. Everything looks exactly the same. And then one thing I want to point out, did you know that he could store his knife here? I had no idea. I had this guy when he first came out, and I had no idea this was for like knife storage. I always thought it was just to put his cyber key and to have that hang there, because that also fits basically perfectly. I had no idea this was for robot mode, so he can just draw his knife from the side of his leg. It's so cool. Such a nice touch. But anyway, yeah, you can see vehicle mode, everything's in place. His head is kind of visible through the windshield. But yeah, he looks really good still. And then before I transform Mudflap, I thought some people might appreciate seeing him with a metal card bot. I forget what this guy's name is, but they make like the same vehicle, except for this guy's much bigger. Alright, and there's Mudflap in his vehicle mode, so there wasn't really anything special that had to be done. He still transforms as normally. There is a gap here just to make space for his ankle tilts, but it's so small you probably wouldn't notice until I pointed it out. But he also looks basically perfect. Alright, and then here he is with Muscle Hide. So Muscle Hide's a lot wider, and he's in a much bigger scale, but I think this one is actually the more realistic looking Crane for obvious reasons. But I think they both look good together. They're very different in what they offer, so I think it's fine having both of them. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed those two little customs, and I'll see you in the next one.